Hey guys, welcome back to the internet. We got a bunch of long stories today, and this first one comes from Imagine the Internet, called Entitled Teacher Tries to Treat High Schoolers Like Toddlers and Reaps What She Sows. So this is a story, or series of stories, that I've considered sharing for some time. I was never sure what category to put it under, before this sub was forged. So this happened about a decade ago when I was in grade 11. I went to high school with a prestigious arts program you had to audition for. I was in the visual arts section. Naturally, the teachers in this program were amongst the best in the region. Except for this shining example. A Swinish woman with a penchant for floral dresses, henceforth referred to as Peppa Pig. This was Peppa Pig's first year at our school, and she did not seem to understand that there was a sizable difference between toddlers and teenagers. She talked to us like we were small children, and became horrendously uncomfortable with anything remotely mature or macabre. Seeing as this was a class of moody teenage artists, this attitude did not end well. I first became aware of how bad this was a few weeks into the term, while bonding with the guy who had become my best friend at the school. He'd had her first semester, so I didn't witness these events myself. A decent part of our grading was based on this sketchbook we kept over the course of the year. We could draw whatever we pleased, so long as it was drawn from life and maintained regularly. My friend loved to draw firearms. I think you can see where this is going. Apparently Peppa Pig panicked upon seeing drawings of guns. She phoned his parents, warning them that their son was dangerous and could potentially shoot up the school. For the record, my friend is one of the kindest, most easygoing guys I've ever known, with loads of friends and zero emotional instability. Thankfully, his parents called her an idiot and the school was not amused by her episode. She let it go, but still watched him suspiciously. When she realized he and I were friends, I often found her beady eyes on me. Unfortunately, our group did kinda look like the school shooter stereotype. Black clothes, metal t-shirts, combat boots, etc. Anyway, that gives you an idea of what this woman was like. She would freak out and phone parents over far more minor things than that. The exasperated parents would typically tell her, politely, to stop wasting their time. Another memorable incident was when she locked most of the class out of the room. See, our room was quite large and connected to the hallway by another hallway. This hid the door from view if you were inside, and the classroom from view if you were outside. For whatever reason, she had locked the door after letting in 3 students who were there early. When the rest of us arrived on time, we couldn't get in. We knocked and no one came. For 15 minutes. As we could not see inside, we assumed no one was there and decided to leave. Fast forward after school, I get home and my dad calls me up to his office. With a vexed expression, he tells me about a confusing phone call he received from Peppa Pig. She was in tears, wailing about how she did not know where the children were and didn't know what to do. She expressed concerns that the children had been kidnapped and feared she'd be held liable. Minutes after this call, my mildly concerned father was contacted again to let him know that I was safe, having attended my next class. She admitted that she locked us out. My dad was not impressed or amused, but remained tactful, telling her to check in the future before making such calls. I learned later that she had done this to every single student who had been locked out. She individually phoned every parent and cried to them about this. And there were just over 20 of us. Seeing as how most of them were not as diplomatic as my dad, she looked like she'd had a heart attack the next time we saw her. With that, you're familiar with both her behavior and her stupidity. Now I will sing you the tale of her unrepentant entitlement. You think after wrongfully accusing a student of being a school shooter and accidentally locking out an entire class, she'd rethink her attitude and learn from her mistakes. Well, not this little piggy. She doubled down, upping her paranoia and pumping points into her condescension stat like you wouldn't believe. Our regional art classes began feeling akin to kindergarten finger painting lessons. Resentment boiled. All of us started to give her attitude. Though I already reviled her for how she treated my friend, she truly earned my ire after implying she'd report me to guidance for drawing a self-portrait with a flayed face, despite doing so in a lesson about facial musculature. Her sweet mask finally broke on our festival night, when parents came to tour the halls and view displayed artwork. Everyone was snippy with her. Students resented her for her attitude. Parents resented her for the phone calls. Even her colleagues resented her. A group of fellow students, including our future valedictorian, were taking a moment to speak candidly in one of the classrooms. Peppa Pig barged in on them and let loose. She went on an insane rant about how horrible they were, how horrible all of us were. She declared everyone in the program to be degenerate failures with no respect. Notably, she claimed that the elementary students she used to teach worshipped the ground she walked on. She said we should be more like them. This debacle transpired in earshot of the program's director, a wonderfully weird woman of small stature and colossal wit. She stepped out to silence Peppa Pig with an infernal glare. Peppa Pig was oddly subdued for the rest of the year, robotically reciting lectures and only interacting with the few bootlicking students. All 2 of them. The grand culmination of our relationship with her came to fruition on the last day of the year. In this special art class, our final evaluation was carried out in the form of a sculpture demonstrating skills from across the term. We were to hold class critiques to judge our technique and see if our intent was accurately conveyed. To give you an idea of how uninspired I felt in this class, I cannot for the life of me remember what my project was. The only project I can recall belonged to a girl I will refer to as Wildcat. She was a striking character whose appearance screamed gothic rave culture. Despite her vivid attire, her project was a meticulously crafted and utterly bland black box. It symbolized everything she felt in this class, and she intended to say as much in her artist's statement. So, how did this critique go? We will never know. Pepe Pig didn't show up. A substitute arrived in her place, instructing us to leave our projects on the desk and clean the room. Tension filled the air, as this was not our responsibility. Many of us also wondered how we would be evaluated without a presentation. Wildcat furiously stormed out of the room, only to return 5 minutes later with a look of horror on her face. "Peppa Pig," she gasped. "She's in the caf, eating cheeseburgers." We barely had time to process this information when Peppa Pig entered the room, visibly annoyed that her scheme to play hooky had been thwarted. She dismissed the equally annoyed substitute, whom had apparently been dragged in out of desperation at the last minute. "Alright everyone," Peppa Pig squealed to the class. "Continue cleaning. If you find you aren't cleaning to the best of your ability, I will dock marks off of your final project." She then had the nerve to duck into the storage room, leaving us effectively unattended. Wildcat's rage reignited. She once again declared her intent to leave, consequences be damned. This time, I followed suit. The 2 of us fast walked down the hall, fearing Peppa Pig's pursuit, but it never came. We fled outside to join up with our mutual friends on their lunch break, explaining the situation. Eager to eat something, Wildcat went inside to get food, and she returned minutes later, her face etched with more primal horror. "She's in the caf again, eating cheeseburgers." Turns out that the rest of the students followed us in our rebellion, ditching the classroom and leaving her alone. Defeated, Peppa Pig returned to the cafeteria. We sent my friend, the gun sketcher, inside to get food, so as not to risk being seen. He returned with foul poutine and doughy cookies, corroborating Wildcat's tale. Peppa Pig was indeed spending her work hours in the cafeteria with her platter. A freaking platter of cheeseburgers. Seriously, a literal stacked pyramid of cheeseburgers. To our knowledge, she remained there until the end of the day, absorbing cheeseburgers into her immense corpulence. In the end, she left the school to return to the primary grades. Apparently the school board banished her to some speck in the countryside, far away from any major population centers. From what we heard, her fate was sealed the night she snapped at a student in front of the program director. Her conduct on the final day destroyed any chance she had for redemption in the eyes of the board. I still have no idea how I was graded on that final project. I never received a mark and my class grade was an 81. Knowing her, she probably picked random numbers and some of us just lucked out. Thus ended the tale of Peppa Pig's first and last year teaching high school. Wow, that's quite the adventure. That's a pretty interesting way of having a breakdown, is just going to eat a whole pile of cheeseburgers. According to most of the people in the story, it must have been a pretty horrifying sight. Anyway, thanks for sharing that story. For those of you wanting your stories to be included in these videos, you have a much higher chance if you use proper grammar, spelling, punctuation, and formatting, just like this one. This is a pretty good example, as it makes it a lot easier for me to read. Alright, now let's move on to Entitled Parents called Idiot Entitled Mom Thinks I'm Taking Drugs and Breaks My Inhaler. Some background, I have asthma, so I keep an inhaler on me most of the time. This incident happened about a month ago, and I decided it was time to post it. So I'm at an undisclosed store to get some groceries while my mom sat in the car. I go through my routine, and everything is well and fine until I'm in the freezer aisle. Since I was a bit sick that day, I had a bad cough, which meant possible asthma attack, so I had my meds at the ready. To no one's surprise, as I begin to have a really bad coughing fit, my asthma triggers. I couldn't breathe and was choking on any air that I could get, so I grabbed my inhaler from my breast pocket. I go to puff it and enter Entitled Mom. Before this, I saw her on the other end of the aisle with her son. I didn't make note of her because she looked like a normal person, nothing of interest other than her nails. I just wondered where she got them done. Now, Entitled Mom was smacking my inhaler out of my hands. She says, "How dare you take drugs in front of my son?" Her child, from what I could see, didn't even notice anything until his mother started to screech like a banshee. This woman continues to yell about how I'm endangering her baby, and going to persuade him to become a drug addict, all while I'm trying not to faint from lack of air and find my inhaler. As this beep of a woman was wailing on me, in comes my savior. So this poor kid was skirting around his mother, and in his hands were my meds. He was about 7, so I think he knew what emergency medications looked like. So the poor kid, the smart little turd, hands me my inhaler, in front of his mother, to which I took the biggest friggin' puff I ever had. My lungs started to let air back in after a moment, and this woman looks like she's about to go off on me and her son. An employee had rushed to the aisle, from what I assume was a random shopper going to get her, and she said immediately ran to me. Said, "Sir, are you okay? What's going on here?" I say, "I'm fine." "This man just took drugs in this store." He said, "Sir, is this true?" I show her my inhaler and tell her that I have bad asthma. She nods and asks entitled mom why she thought I was doing drugs. It's drugs, look." She snatches the inhaler again and took the bottle from the freaking spacer and showed it in full to the woman. "Ma'am, that's this young man's prescription for asthma." The lady is suddenly white in the face, looking from the meds to me and back. She suddenly drops the spacer and the bottle and takes off running with the poor kid. We didn't pursue her, but I didn't see her after that. I was able to get enough air to complete my shopping, and the employee gave me a coupon. Very sweet of them. My inhaler now has multiple chips in the spacer, and the bottle's fluid leaked, so I have to get a new one, unfortunately. What an idiot woman. Don't know how she raised such a smart kid. Hey, you better watch out when you're trying to do air out in public. Air is one heck of a drug. Next up we have, you want to time every ticket I do with a person shadowing me? Okay. So as a tech of going on 30 years, I've seen some stupid management directives. This is one of my favorites. Back in 2007, I worked for a large bank that is based in Atlanta, and I worked in Richmond in a 28-story office tower. My primary job was desktop support and fixing phones. At that time, I was very athletic. I moved fast at all times and hated to use the elevator. If I had to go less than 6 floors, I took the stairs. My boss didn't care, for as a team, we were the most efficient team in the company as far as number of tickets worked each week per tech. We worked smart, not hard. So upper management in Atlanta decides one day to do a deep assessment on how all the techs in the bank did our job. My team gets a visit from Atlanta one day in the form of a heavy-set guy who says he will be shadowing us to see how we all did our job. He was a bit of a condescending jerk, too, in his attitude. He even had a stopwatch to time us. Now, we all knew right away what was happening. Management wanted to outsource us, so they needed to know what we did, how long it took, and what we used so they could put the cost on it before soliciting for bids. Let's just say my team was not thrilled about it. Now, I decided to be a smart aleck about this, and my team knew what I had planned for this event. I was told this overweight, condescending jerk was to shadow us and time us. Okay, he is going to have to keep up. Time for malicious compliance. I only used the stairs. So our lab was on the 20th floor. A typical morning for me would be like this. I'd run a desktop monitor ticket to the 6th floor, then go back to 20 to get my phone bag to go to lower level 1 to the IPX to hook up a phone, then go to the 14th floor to test the phone, then up to 22 to fix a printer, then down to 7 to look at a laptop. Today, I'm only doing the stairs, so this guy was about to have a heart attack trying to keep up with me while I did my job. I took no pity on him and didn't even pay attention to him. As far as I was concerned, this jerk was assisting others in having my job eliminated. At some point, I'd lost him in the stairwell. Later, my boss says to me the guy was a bit mad at me for taking the stairs, but my boss told him, "That is how my tech works, and he is one of my best. If you can't keep up, that's your problem." To this day, I have said she was the best boss I've ever had. Later, I found out what I did got back to upper management in Atlanta. They were pissed, yet they could not punish me, for I was doing my job and did it very well. In April of 2008, we found out we were outsourced, just like we knew it was going to happen. I no longer worked there. Well dang, seems like you probably had a pretty well-paying office job and you got a gym membership out of it too. You must have been in pretty great shape if you could run up and down that many stairs every day. And here we are with more malicious compliance. You ever notice how like almost every malicious compliance story is at least somewhat related to being at work? I don't know, maybe that's just the whole point of the board, but this one's called, "You're not paid to be on call because you're not on call." So I work in a support role for a global insurance/investment company. Over the last 6 months, I've lost many an evening and weekend to unexpected work problems, with not even a thank you, let alone any financial compensation. As an example, being called at 21:30 and asked if you can log on when you've met your friends for a drink. Where a job needs to provide out of hours support, a supplement is meant to be paid for being on call, with additional payment if you're required to actually work. My contract is based on annual salary, where additional work might be required for no extra pay or overtime, if it's considered business as usual, or known in advance. However, the work I've been asked to do on weekends and evenings is not business as usual. Business as usual assumes process as work. If something goes wrong, someone needs to step in and fix it, and it's no longer business as usual. Hopefully that makes sense. A couple months ago, I had the conversation with my manager about being paid for being on call. I was told the work I was covering actually fell under business as usual, and as I was always given advance notice, I wouldn't be paid for being on call. The manager wouldn't budge on this, so I made it clear I would not be taking my laptop home or available unless I was given advance notice I might be required to log on, to which my manager agreed. On this glorious day, I received a call from my manager asking me to log on as some critical data was missing from a file, causing significant problems with several admin systems. Trying to sound as sincere as I could, I apologized and said as I was not made aware in advance, and I'm not on call, my laptop was left at the office. This was meant by an to which I responded, "Good luck and I'll see you tomorrow," expecting it to be a crap show in the morning for Muggins here to clean up, but it'll be worth it. And the final story for today is Dispose Your Trash, Trash. So I'm currently studying in the UK and staying in a student accommodation. It's my third year here, and the first 2 years staying here have been rather uneventful. This year, however, I was gifted with a neighbor from hell. All of my neighbors are international students, and my neighbor is a deceptively sweet-looking girl from India. She moved in around half a year ago to the room at the end of the corridor. So this neighbor doesn't really go out much and always cooks in her studio. As our windows can't open wider than an inch due to safety regulations, the rooms are very poorly ventilated, and we usually have to keep our doors open when we cook to get rid of the smell from our room. I didn't mind the strong curry smell, as I loved curry, but my other neighbors weren't too pleased with the new neighbor. They couldn't really do much about it, and so everyone just put up with it. However, that neighbor developed a really messed up habit a few months back. Our accommodation has a bin area for us to dispose of our trash. This neighbor, however, began leaving bags of food waste outside her room on the carpeted corridor. Mind you, she placed the bags outside her room because the stench of rot became too unbearable for her to leave it inside. I went home one day and was immediately hit by a nauseating odor of death when the lift doors opened to my level. It was the first time I noticed a trash bag of rotten food placed just outside her door, but I didn't do anything about it. The bag of rotten food was left outside for a good 3 to 4 days before I started complaining. I took pictures and emailed them to accommodation staff, requesting them to inform this neighbor that she couldn't leave her rotting trash outside her room. The staff emailed and called her, but she ignored them. I went down to the reception daily for a week and a half, complaining to the staff that her bag of rotting trash was still lying on the corridor. I was really angry because the staff couldn't really do much due to their company policy and could only advise the neighbor to dispose of her trash. After more than a week, I told the receptionist that if they don't get the neighbor to dispose of her trash, I'll confront her directly. As the staff didn't want to escalate the situation, they immediately went up to the neighbor's room and told her to dispose of her trash. She told them that she'll do it later, as usual, and closed the door. The staff decided to be a nice guy and threw her trash away for her. She then continued leaving bags of rotten trash outside her room every 2 to 3 days, and the trash piled up along the side of the wall. The smell was insanely unbearable, and I made almost daily complaints via email with pictures to no avail. The staff threatened the neighbor with fines, which worked for a while, but she went back to her old ways and began leaving her trash outside her room once more. She once left a leaking trash bag of rotten curry, and that was the last straw for me. The rotten curry got into the carpets and stank for a good month. The receptionist gave me the same old speech that they couldn't really do much besides threaten to fine her. I've sent a total of 65 complaint emails with pictures to the staff before I eventually gave up on that front. Can't do anything about it? Fine. It's time for some serious freaking revenge. So 3 weeks ago, my neighbor left yet another bag of trash outside her room. I took a piss into a bottle, got out of my room in the middle of the night, and drenched all of her trash bags with my piss. When I got up the next day, all of her trash bags were miraculously gone. She continued leaving bags of rotten trash though, and I always gave her a 2-day grace period before I messed with her. The next time it happened, I rummaged through my fridge to look for any rotten food I had left. I opened a pack of spoiled sausages, dumping them on top of her rotten trash, and poured half a carton of rotten milk into the underside of her door, causing the milk to flow straight into her room. Boy, did it smell like absolute crap the next day. I woke up to loud screams leashing for almost half an hour. I stay a few rooms down from the neighbor, but it was loud enough to wake me up. She was freaking livid. She called the staff up to her room and demanded that they find the culprit. However, due to the fact that there were no cameras along our corridor, the staff couldn't really do much again and told her to dispose of her trash. 2 weeks ago was when my genius master plan really began. I started buying the same trash bags as her. As she continued leaving her trash outside her room, I started doing the same by leaving bags of rotten trash outside of her room together with hers. I then poked holes in all the bags with a toothpick so that they leaked. She was absolutely furious at this point, but the staff couldn't distinguish between her trash and the trash I left, and they assumed that all the trash belonged to her. She was also fined for spilling rotting food liquid in the lifts. which did have cameras, due to the leaking trash bags. It's been a week now, and she hasn't left any bags of rotting trash outside yet, so I'm gonna take the win for now. Ew. It sounds like you only made the problem worse. Man, so something really bizarre just happened to me while recording this. So, towards the end of that last story, a Duracell AA battery that's just sitting on my table just randomly like popped for no reason. It's not even like plugged into anything. And then it just started dripping out this little liquid, and it's making a pool right now. Here's what it sounded like while I was recording. And I always gave her a 2-day grace. Well then, I have no idea what that was all about, but that does it for all the stories today. Sorry, no question for the day. The stories went a little bit too long, and I didn't see any good questions today anyway. But I will talk to you guys tomorrow.